From the Arkansas Sports Network, it's an in-depth Arkansas Razorbacks podcast featuring the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Brad Caldwell.
When I grew up, I remember the Quinn Grovey days where the SWC champions in 88 and 89. I mean, that was the time that I grew up. That's the time that I got hooked on Razorbacks.
Around here, we call him the Rain Man of Arkansas Razorback Sports, Mr. Duran Miller.
Real quick, speaking about going down to Baton Rouge, and all the corn dogs and all that nature. But y'all remember the time Bobby Boucher intercepted the quarterback and his pants fell off?
And finally, he wears his hair upside down and he pushes all the buttons, Mr. Bill Harshaw.
When you look at the Razorback athletic program across the board, Hunter Yurichak's got this thing moving in the right direction because these kids are looking at Arkansas athletics going, hey, Arkansas is the place to be, and we haven't had that in a while.
Everyone get ready, because you're now connected to the Razor Wire.
And welcome into yet another edition of the Razor Wire. I'm Bill Harshaw, joining me Brad Caldwell and Duran Miller as always. And guys, it's been a sad week for Razorback athletics with the Razorbacks falling 2-1 to end their season against NC State.
It's tough, man. I actually felt like that I had been punched in the gut just a little bit. Really similar feeling to what it felt like when that foul ball hit the ground against Oregon State a few years back. I mean, it was really a similar feeling. I had to, we literally had to go home or go somewhere else, decompress. I was watching at a friend's house, had to go somewhere else, decompress a little bit. I said, I don't want to go home. I'm going to probably pout a little bit. I need something to take my mind off of this. So we went to get some ice cream.
Hey, there you go. I have a lot of friends that aren't only Razorback fans. They're a Florida fan, a Texas fan. I got a lot of friends that are like that. And after they lost, I had a lot of friends, texting me, hey, do we need to worry about you? Are you on suicide watch? And I said, yeah, suicide it is, man. It's not good. But hey, we got a jam-packed show for you. We got Phil Elson coming on a little later. It's going to be a really good interview with Phil Elson, voice of the Razorback baseball team and the Razorback women's basketball team. And stay tuned. You don't want to miss that. But guys, we knew coming into this that NC State was a formidable foe. I think I know I kind of overlooked it a little bit, in my opinion. I expected to be in Omaha. A lot of people had already, booked rooms in Omaha and gotten ready for that. So, what's your take on the? It was Omaha or bust, and I guess it's a bust.
Yeah, it was. Well, I know that we have been making plans the whole time here. We have been, Duran and I especially, have been setting together, hey, what's this plan look like? What does that plan look like? It's really tough. I mean, you got the College World Series starting tomorrow, and I have no interest in it whatsoever. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch some team that Arkansas swept. I don't want to watch some team Arkansas beat 3-4. I don't want to watch some team that Arkansas beat win the national championship. And I mean, at this point, that's what you're looking at. I mean, Texas, they're 1-0 against Texas. They're 1-0 against Vanderbilt. They're 3-0 against Mississippi State. They were 3 out of 4 against Tennessee. Should have been 4 out of 4. One of those teams is probably going to win it all. And you're going to see that. And I don't care. I don't want to watch it. It's just too painful.
Yeah, it's a tough time. We definitely had plans, and I knew going in. We talked about it last week on the show that they had the batting. They had 5 good pitchers, and we just thought we'd get into them more than we did, and it kind of hurt us a little bit coming out big, right out of the bat, and helped them kind of just give that one up, go on. But I was excited. Me and Brad were going to get matching tattoos, and we were going to trash hotel rooms while we were up there, but just didn't work out, guys. So I agree with you, Brad. I really haven't. I mean, it's going to be hard to watch any of it, even though I'm a big college baseball fan. Yeah.
Yep.
It's just it's a bad feeling right now.
It's like, in my opinion, the baseball season ended when Arkansas is dead, and at this point, I'm with you. I don't have any interest in watching it. One thing that I am interested in right now is Razorback football. I'm getting ready for that, and we had some big news coming off the hill. One thing that's hot off the razor wire is Dow Loggins named the tight ends coach and that's a big one.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. I think you get a chance to bring back a guy that, as far as just coaching, is one of the biggest names in coaching that is associated with the program. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's been an NFL offensive coordinator at 4 different teams. A guy that Arkansas, I know at least some people actually listed as a viable candidate for the head coaching job at one point or another. Sam Pittman gets him to come in. I think that there is some plans involved with this. I don't think that Dow Loggins is coming in just to be an NFL or a tight ends coach after being an NFL offensive coordinator. There's got to be some things going on behind the scenes. I think that your expectation probably is that Kendall Briles is not going to be around forever, and you get Loggins acclimated to the college game, what the offense is doing, that sort of thing, and then you turn around and he's the next offensive coordinator whenever that might be.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think our holders are going to be as good as it gets for the next few years. But
Yes.
no, the dude, man, he's been with the Titans, with the Browns, the Bears, the Dolphins, the Jets. I mean, and he's been offensive coordinator at almost all of those places. And you're talking about getting an amazing pedigree here. And I agree. It's kind of I don't know if he's just coming here to be a tight ends coach, like you said. It definitely feels like there's more to that, and we'll see how everything goes. But I mean, you couldn't have picked up a better hire up there. Sam Pittman knocked it out of the box for sure.
Well, the relationship between the head coach and the offensive coordinator needs to be strong. If anything, the Houston Dale Nutt and all of that drama that went on back with Mitch Mustaine, that taught us that has to be key. And we haven't seen any animosity between Briles and Coach Pittman, but that's the one thing that we were talking about is why Loggins? He does have a connection to Arkansas. He was the long snapper, but if something ever was to happen to Briles, I think Loggins is the fine fit to step into that role. And I don't want to imply that there's anything rotten in the cotton up there on the Hill, but Loggins is definitely a good person to have on the Hill. I think he can expand his knowledge, and Sam Pittman continues to align himself and have these great minds around him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that you've got to consider that the coordinator positions at Arkansas seem to be a revolving door, no matter who the head coach is. We almost lost both of them this last year. So you've got to expect that there's going to be a change in at least one, if not both, of your coordinators this next year. Hopefully, I mean, if I'm choosing to pick one or the other, who I'm going to keep, Barry Odom's the one I want to keep. Not to say anything against Briles and what he's doing. I think he's easier to replace than what Odom is. And so I think that if this ends up being the transition, I think it's a great move, and I think that they're doing a great job. I think it's a great move anyway. The fact that you've got an NFL offensive coordinator to come be your tight ends coach.
And if
Yeah,
Sam Pittman is thinking that far ahead to line this guy up, then it's great, because what he's doing is he's bringing this guy in as the tight ends coach with the expectation that one day he may be the offensive coordinator, and getting his players in intimate contact with him so that they know him. It's not going to be a change of momentum. It's not going to be a change of personnel. It's going to be a familiar face, and that is what Sam Pittman is doing right, if indeed he may be setting him up for that OC position.
Yeah, and if you look at Browse's track record, year 2 here, I mean, that's about as far as he's ever been anywhere. He hops around a lot, other than when he was at Baylor. But so maybe they already know. Browse, we don't know what his aspirations are. I think he probably wants to be a head coach at some point. I feel like he's gotten the experience now at all those different stints: Florida State, Arkansas. He was with Kiffin, Lane Kiffin, and so I mean Florida Atlantic, and I think who knows what goes on behind the scenes, but this could be a mutual thing. He could be totally ecstatic about bringing him in and working with him this year and bouncing ideas off of each other. So I mean, I think it's a great win-win for the program, and we'll see how all that plays out down the road. But it's a great hire.
Brad, you got anything else to add about Loggins?
I think he's right. I think he hit it on the head.
He thinks so. I think so. But I think it's a great hire for Arkansas, bringing Loggins in. And, again, going back to baseball rather, Looking back at that NC State series, it was game one was 21-2. We think, man, we're gonna roll. Confidence went through the roof. What happened?
21-2, I think helped or hurt our offensive approach, especially. Man, I said it before, they were not rattled by the 21-2 score. It didn't bother them a bit. In fact, I wonder if somehow they welcomed it just a little bit, because it was there was nothing in press conferences. We got beat, so what? Arkansas had their opportunity to win the series when they went up 2-0 in the game 2, and then didn't take advantage of it. I mean, that's it. If you want to take any time in that 3-game set there, you won 21-2, you outscored them 21-0. At one point, you're down 1-0, you scored 21 straight runs. You turn around and you win, or you get into 2 more runs. So you've scored 23 straight runs in this series. You've got to put the hammer on them at that point. And Arkansas failed to do that. A lot of it had to do with the pitching in that situation. I will say, overall, I blame the hitting, because the pitching was good enough to win us the series. In that instance, when Costu gave up the 3 home runs in the 1 inning, that was the difference in the series, and really the series changer.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of odd, because Van Horn talked about it in a presser around the start of the SC tournament, a little bit, maybe a couple weeks before that, how Costu was kind of about a 4-out guy, and they kind of figured that out with him. And so for him to come in, get an out or two, get out of that first inning, and then to come back in, he gives up the solo. Then he gives up another solo. You would think he kind of starts to get pulled there at that point, but we don't know. I honestly think also that there was a little bit of, let's save Cops a little bit. Let's not bring him early in this game, because what if he comes in and for whatever reason he don't have his best game or whatever, what have you, and we use them all up basically, where we can only get an inning or 2 out of them tomorrow. Because usually when he has the 4 or 5 inning games, he has a day between, and then it's that third game. It's usually the first game, and then that third game he can come back in and pitch 7 or whatever he needs to do. So I think a little bit of that, they wanted to try to get through our lineup a little bit, and then get through our bullpen a little bit with some of our other guys, and they just stroked him, and he got the out. And I'll be honest with you, and Van Horn talked about that after the game. Some of those pitches was really weren't bad pitches that they hit on Costu. The first one especially was low. The guy just kind of reached out, poked at it, and he just hit it out in front, and it was enough to carry it on out of here. So I feel like he wasn't just awful. It's just a good lineup. They put some good swings on it, and that was probably the difference. We come back and we got it 6-5. We brought Cops in for those last 2 innings. But it's just a little too late. The offense couldn't get around to do it. We left, I believe, I know in the final game, we left 6 people on base in like a 3-inning stretcher, like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th inning. And we had some other guys in that second game where we left on base. And I know Goodhart was up once with 2 outs with the bases loaded. We just couldn't get that big hit, to get those runs across. So I agree with you, Brad. It's definitely on the hitting, in my opinion, more than the pitching. The pitching was good enough to win this.
Yeah, now,
I agree.
Don't quote me. Let me see this real quick, Bill. Don't quote me on this, but I thought I heard on the broadcast they said that from the time that we left Fayetteville against Florida through the SEC tournament, through the regional, through the super regional, Arkansas hit 202 as a team.
That's a big slump.
I believe it. And it was just, how many pop-ups did we see in this series, especially games 2 and 3?
Infield pop-ups.
Yes, and you know what that shows. You know what they're doing. They're trying to hit home runs, and I felt like they hit so many in that first game. It just kind of got in their minds a little bit, and they kept with that approach. And honestly, that approach has worked all year long. We've been good enough to make it work in all those tough games. And we're blessed to have 5, 6 guys in double-digit home runs, and you're going to get away with that a lot. But there are times when you get into that serious postseason play, like at Omaha. I don't think a team's ever won it didn't have like a team ERA. I think it's like 4 or something like that, 4 or less. That's the only teams that win it. You've got to have serious pitching, and when you go against the best pitching, when it's all on the line and their backs are against the wall, you've got to have a little bit better approach. We can't all be sluggers. We got to have a few more leadoff bats in there. I think that was a big key to it.
And I think we're all right. I agree with both of you. I think offensively is where we lost this. I mean, you got to give credit where credit is due. NC State had a great game plan coming into this, but I think offensively we were swinging for the fence exactly like you said, Duran. We weren't trying to hit the gaps. We weren't trying to get people on base. It was all about all or nothing. But I don't think that the fans in general see that. I think by and large, the most part, especially game two, is wanting to blame Dave Van Horn for leaving cost you in too long. And what's your stance on that?
Well, let's couple that with the fact that Lockhart, he pulled Lockhart in that situation as well. So gave up 2 hits. Lockhart did through, I believe it was 3 2/3 or something like that, or maybe 3 1/3. Costu comes in, he gets the last 2 outs of the inning. But as Duran has said, they basically knew that Costu was good for about 4 outs. That's all he was good for. And they left him in, and NC State took advantage of a very hot day where the ball was carrying. And, I don't know. I mean, hindsight's 2020. We can sit here and talk about all the mistakes that quote unquote Dave Van Horn made. But at the end of the day, he's the one that's pulling that trigger, not us. That's a pressure packed situation. We weren't in that situation to make that call. He knows his team better than anybody does, and it just didn't work out. I mean, that's the bottom line.
No, I think more. I think what happened is, Brad, you didn't make that phone call, brother. You have that number, and you should have called him and said, "Look, that Kostu's only good for 4."
I had to. What I didn't do is actually consult with Razorback Nation on Facebook first, then make the call, and then that sort of thing. But listen, we're all armchair quarterbacks in some way, and that's what we're doing here. We're talking about what happened, right? I mean, we're interested. We like to break it down, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, we're not the one that's making the call, and it doesn't rest on our shoulders. You don't think that Dave Van Horn feels pressure? I mean, the foul ball hit the ground in 2018. The dude wants a national championship probably more than any of us do. He's got the number 1 team in the country, and he knows this is a great opportunity for him, but he also sees that his team is slumping greatly at the plate, and he's trying to do anything he can to make it work. We depended on Cops in the postseason way more than we ever did in the regular season. That cost us huge. I mean, and I say that Cops did his job against NC State. I said going into game 3 that they would have to win it 2-1 to beat us, because I knew we would see as much of Cops as we could. I didn't even know we were starting him at the time. They beat us 3-2. Okay,
and that's the other thing.
We did everything that we could.
That's the other thing that fans are wanting to blame the loss on Dave Van Horn for, is starting Cops. This is the first time all season long that Cops had been in that starter role. And I mean, yeah, it does change his preparation for the game. He goes through a different routine. It does change things and the game day experience for Cops. But at the end of the day, people want to blame DVH for leaving Costu in too long and for starting Cops in game 3. And it's my opinion that regardless of whether you left Costu in or started Cops or not, the bats weren't there to keep the offense alive. And had the bats been there, it doesn't matter if Costu stayed in an extra batter. It doesn't matter if Kevin Cops threw his heart out on the mound in game 3. It doesn't matter, because the bats would have won the game. And so I think Arkansas fans trying to throw Dave Van Horn under the bus is just upset, and rightfully so, but upset that, hey, we didn't win this thing. Whose fault is it? It's got to be the head coach. What can we pick out? And they're picking on Costu and Cops in that situation instead of looking at the bats. Now, I understand that pitching wise, we had a lot of issues. And what I mean by that is injuries. I mean, we lost Paulette. We've had some injuries all season long, and those hurt going down the last backstretch. But what got us in the Super Regional was the bats.
Yeah, and like we were saying there, in hindsight, it's easy, but like I said earlier, Costu wasn't pitching that bad. They were just having better at bats. And you know, we know now that he gave up the third home run. We lost by 1 run, but we didn't know that at the time. Dave Van Horn didn't know that was going to happen at the time. He had just gotten an out after the second solo. So I mean, it's the guy's a genius. He knows his pitchers better than anybody. He brought Lockhart out. Lockhart wasn't just doing terrible. They bunted 2 times in a row, moving a guy over to get a couple of those runs. And I mean, he wasn't missing his spots just awful, but he didn't have. He said after the game, Van Horn did, that he didn't have his A game. You know, he only had a couple pitches working, and he just didn't have what he normally did. So it was time to make that change. And, you know, I think Lockhart was upset when he got pulled early in that game. Probably at himself, you know, because he, you know, everybody wants to do a great job and give you the innings. But, you know, I think that was the best lineup that we faced all year long. I really do. And especially during that series. I mean, they were hot at the right time. And honestly, they've got the numbers to back it up on the year. Cops pitched his heart out. I mean, to give up 3 runs against that lineup on 117 pitches, get out of here. You know what I mean? If anybody blames that on Cops or Van Horn for leaving him in there, don't know what you're talking about, because the guy gave his heart out. Gotta love the guy. And
you're going to ride him.
It's really on the bats.
You're going to ride him as much as you possibly could. And I know they had Wicklander warming up, but I mean, if I'm putting the game in the hands of one guy, it's going to be Cops, and then I'll throw Wicklander when we can. You know, it just didn't work out, guys. I mean, that's really the bottom line. I mean, we can say what we want to say. We can second guess what we want to second guess. The bottom line is there was one series the whole season that we didn't win, and it didn't work out. It happened to be the very most important one. Unfortunately for us, anybody that wants to hammer Dave Van Horn, let me just say this to you: you're an idiot. Okay, Dave Van Horn is at Arkansas. He's one of the top 4 coaches that ever coached at Arkansas. You got Frank Broyles, Nolan Richardson, and
John
McDonald. Those 3. Okay, he's better.
If you want to throw an extra one in, yeah, Norman Bryan was what I was going to throw in, but you know, that would be the only one that you may want to throw in.
He's better than Norm DeBryan. You could throw Eddie Sutton in there, and then you know you get into
left lane hammer down, you know.
Bobby Petrino. I don't know. You know, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Ken Hatfield's got
Ken Hatfield,
record.
right? I mean, they're up there. Dave Van Horn has made the Mount Rushmore of coaches in Arkansas. Now, if he wins one, then he passes Nolan Richardson. I mean,
he's right there with them.
Yeah. I mean,
if he wins one. Right now, he's behind them.
Right, exactly. Just a little bit though.
Right.
And I mean, if you actually look at the span of his career, he's done more than Nolan did, except he didn't win the national championship. I mean,
he was 1 out away.
He was 1 out away. And so now it's that point of, when is it Arkansas's turn to win it all? You know, that's why we make plans to go to Omaha every stinking year, because we think Arkansas's got a shot to make it. It's going to be no different next year. I promise you, by the time that we're doing the Razor Wire podcast this next year, which we will be doing, by the way, we'll be talking about Arkansas going to Omaha, possibly. I mean, we're going to be there again.
Yes.
So that's on Dave Van Horn. He's the one running the program.
100%,
so anybody that wants to get at Dave Van Horn, get out of here.
I mean, that dude's won 50 wins. He did that at Nebraska. Nobody wins 50 wins in Nebraska. He made them what they are right now. And yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the dude's legit, and anybody say anything else, you just can go kick rocks, basically, you know? So
exactly. I mean, look, I get the frustration. I get when you get close that you want to win it. I get it. I understand 100%, but you've got to be there to win it. Nolan Richardson had the same thing. The same things were being said about him during his tenure for a long time. He can get you there, but he can't win it. He goes to the Final Four in 1990, and they're like, you know, they get destroyed by Duke, and everybody's like, he's not that good. He's not elite or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you know, you've got a Corliss, you got a Scotty, you got a, you know, you get these guys coming in together. It all works together. And that's the thing. There's so many talented teams out there. Let's just take 94 as an example. If everything doesn't come together for that 94 basketball team, they don't win it. It's got to come together. It's got to be everything all at once coming together. Unfortunately for Arkansas, it all came together in Hoover. It didn't come together in the Super Regional. and then into Omaha. And that's the one thing that if you can complain about anything that's going on with Dave Van Horn lately, the last two times, College World Series in 19 and then the Super Regional, is that we haven't had it come together at the time that we thought we would.
That's
Right.
it.
I
And
agree.
those are some of the things that you actually talked to Phil Elson about, Brad. Kind of set the scene for the the Phil Elson interview that you did, and let's go ahead and listen to that. So go ahead and set the scene for us.
And first off, Phil was so gracious with his time. We appreciate him. And just taking some time out it was easy to get set up and everything. So I appreciate that. He just talked about a lot. I mean, talked about the different aspects of the program, talked about what happened over this weekend. I feel like that if you watch this interview, it'll make you feel better about what's going on with Razorback baseball. Even though if you'll just take one step back, you will be able to feel good about what's going on. I think Phil can help you do that. Phil, I think the first thing I have to ask is, what do you do and how long does it take you to get to a place where somebody actually introduces you as the great?
Nobody that ever might be viewed as great in other people's eyes is ever comfortable, being told that they are. That's probably just a fact. Probably
Right.
makes my cheeks rosy and everything, but if you think I'm good at what I do, then I'm going to have to take that as a compliment and just say thank you. That's the best way to handle any compliment, no matter how embarrassed it makes you.
Well, I will tell you that I have had my hand in a little bit of baseball this year. So, in announcing it, I can tell you that I respect what you do greatly. After kind of getting a little bit of the ins and outs of doing baseball play by play, it's so much different. And as you know, because you do women's basketball as well as baseball, how different it is to do baseball versus any other sport.
Well, everybody knows the dead time that's involved in baseball, so there's going to be more of a conversation, I think, than in a lot of the other sports where the ball or the puck is always in action. So, baseball, it's just not in action as often. And it's a different kind of a sport too. It's not an end-to-end sport the way that it's described. It's not the ball always going left and right with an offense and a defense that's, essentially doing the same thing in basketball and in football and in soccer. They're trying to keep the ball out of their end zone or their goal.
Mm-hmm.
The defense holds the ball in baseball, so that makes it different than the other ones. And it's not a back and forth sport like that. It's such a battery concentrated sport. So it's just it's much different. It's a much differently described game than I think the other ones that we're used to hearing on the radio.
Absolutely. I didn't do the radio. I actually did live streaming, so it's a little bit different in that aspect as well. But still, nonetheless, a much different but very good experience. I enjoyed it. So let's talk a little bit. Obviously, the biggest thing on people's minds is the fact that the Omahogs are not going to Omaha, and a lot of people are dealing with it in their own ways. I'll ask you, how are you dealing with it?
Just by, living life, hosting a radio show, talking about it with people and figuring out what's next, really. I mean, it's college baseball ends so abruptly when it's over, and to me that feels different, at least from my experience working in professional baseball, minor league baseball, or even as a fan of a major league baseball team. And that's probably because my team, the Pirates, don't make it to the playoffs ever. So when the season is going to end and you can kind of prepare yourself for it. With a college baseball team like Arkansas and a lot of the other teams in the SEC, but definitely Arkansas right now, you're never going to be ready for the season to end unless they raise a national championship trophy. You'll be satisfied in Omaha, like you always will be, just because that's really, you got to get there first. And then for me, it's not like what happens in the College World Series is gravy. I always think a successful college baseball season is Omaha, no matter what. And that's not to say that this is not a successful year for Arkansas, because that would be way too short-sighted to view it as anything but, because of other championships they won and other things that happened. So, my way of dealing with it is just being realistic about it, and move on. We all have lives to live. That includes the players. The players will move on, and just for some people, it might take a little longer than others.
Well, what do you make of it? I mean, I think that everybody, including myself, were making plans on being in Omaha. I mean, that was something that I don't think it crossed very many people's minds that they wouldn't be in Omaha. What happened?
Baseball happened. This is the most unpredictable sport. It's unfair. And they ran into they ran into problems offensively the last couple of weeks that ended up festering manifold in back-to-back games. And I think that's probably, the best way to put it. You can reason all kinds of things, but I think what happened is that number one in baseball is more beatable than number one in football or number one in basketball and hockey too. It's just the nature of the game. And I don't blame people for making their hotel reservations and buying their College World Series tickets and looking ahead and talking about if it was like it was going to happen. I always said, because I have a sense of, not that they were going to lose, it's just I've been around baseball long enough to know that it's unfair and cruel, and the teams that should be somewhere don't always make it there.
Right.
It's unfortunate that that's what happened here.
Yeah, it's really hard for fans to wrap their mind around the fact that you've got a Mississippi State team there that was swept by Arkansas at Mississippi State, a Tennessee team there that was beaten by Arkansas 3 out of 4, really should have been 4 out of 4. A Vanderbilt team that they met one time, Arkansas beat them. A Texas team, they met one time, Arkansas beat them. And then NC State is the only team in the College World Series that Arkansas has a losing record against. I think for fans, especially after the 2018 season, it seems like, when is it going to be our turn? I guess that's the feeling that I get. What do you think about that?
My feeling is that you're at a position with this program where it feels like it's bound to happen sooner or later. You can't take for granted ever winning one, just like you can't ever take for granted making it to a College World Series. So that would also mean you can't take for granted how close 2018 was, and it's difficult to say, well, they were that close, they'll get there again. They did get to Omaha the next year,
Mm-hmm.
And this year, obviously, for me, I felt they were good enough to contend for a national championship. This program is not a flash in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
This is not like UCF coming out of the blue in college football one year, or LSU making the run that they did a couple of years ago in football. That felt like that. With what happened in them last year, feels like a flash in the pan. This is a program that is built to last because of the recognizability they already have across the country of making players better, of fielding really good teams, of having some of the best facilities, if not the best facilities in the country at any level for baseball, for having a passionate fan base that is going to back you, and an entire state feels like it's behind you for the level that they have to play at because of the league they play. All of these things lead to a program that should be near the level of national champion every year. So I feel like they should always contend, as long as Dave Van Horn is the coach, and they bring talent in, and they have everything that they need to be close to being able to battle for it. I'm not going to tell you when it's going to happen, but I do think it will.
I think that makes people feel better. I'm kind of on the same page with you. I agree. I think it's just a matter of time. I feel like right now Arkansas baseball is somewhat like Georgia football. You know, they're up there, they're in the upper echelon every year. And you know that eventually, if they continue to knock on the door, that it's going to happen eventually. Dave Van Horn, to me, it's at a point where he's too good of a coach at this point to go without one. And then you think about a guy like Mike Martin, who went so many years and never did win one. And so,
And Ron Polk. I mean,
uh,
it's happened.
yes, it has. And like you said, baseball is a very cruel game, in so many ways. And for that reason alone, for guys like Polk, Mike Martin, and so far Dave Van Horn. Let's talk a little bit about what you think that they have coming back. We just said, we feel like that they could contend again, possibly. What do you think this team? What the makeup of this team is for next year?
Well, I mean, you're losing a lot. You're losing a lot because the draft is back to, well, it's not back to normal, but it's going to be 20 rounds. I think there's going to be more than a handful of players picked off this team, and then other players that just exhausted their eligibility. So, I mean, it is difficult to say, but I think you have a core. You have a good core of returning players that can form the basis of a really good team offensively and on the pitcher's mound. I mean, Robert Moore's coming back for one more year. You'll have Dylan Leach as your catcher probably every game. I think Dylan is going to be a good. I like what I saw out of Ethan Bates this year, who for me probably will be one of your starting corner outfielders. Caden Wallace had himself a really good freshman season. I'm excited to see him play third base next year, which is his natural position. I think he was a good outfielder, but I think he's a better third baseman. And Zach Gregory, I think, ought to come back. I like Zach as a left fielder and a leadoff batter and somebody that came through with some real clutch hits this year. So, and then there's Charlie Welch, who I would expect is going to be back for another season and probably is the every game designated hitter. It's going to be really good probably to put him in there as your cleanup batter. That's my guess for every game. On the mound, there's something to work with on the mound there. I mean, there's always going to be with this team. Jackson Wiggins and Peyton Paulette could form a very interesting weekend tandem for starting pitching. And there's ifs there with that. I mean, Peyton, his elbow, which I think from what I'd heard is he's not supposed to have surgery. If he's able to come back, rehab properly, and work his way back the way that he'd need to, he's got everything you need to be a frontline SEC ace pitcher. And that's the same with Jackson Wiggins. And his stuff's electric. So both of those guys have I think, what it takes to be really good starting pitchers in the SEC. And by that, I also mean not just 5 innings, not 4 innings. I mean 6 to 7 innings, which you didn't get on a consistent basis for Arkansas this year, except for the most part from Patrick Wicklander. But that is one thing that I think will probably change next year. Is I would imagine there's going to be more innings from your starting pitchers. I didn't even mention Connor Nolan, who he didn't even get a chance to get into that many games this year, and I felt like he finished strong. And I'd like to see a healthy Connor Nolan, work his way back into a weekend rotation role where it looked like he was going to settle into, as he did as a freshman.
Yeah, I agree. While we're talking about pitching, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Kevin Kopps, right? And the impact that he had this season was phenomenal. And as, again, we kind of refer back to a cruel game, Kevin Kopps being the last pitch that he throws in Baum-Walker Stadium's a home run. But the guy had an unbelievable season. I think the best season in college baseball by anybody. How did this happen? I mean, he was somewhat of an average pitcher up until this year.
He was. I would counter that, say he was above average, with the exception of last year. He was a pretty important piece of 2017 as a freshman, and definitely the 2019 team. I don't think they would have made it to Omaha without him in 2019. But that's not to say that anybody would have seen this coming, which to me was the most unique season in college baseball history for a pitcher, not just at Arkansas, but anywhere ever. I can't imagine anybody doing double digits wins and saves in the same year. He finished 2 wins short, 3 saves short of the Arkansas single season record in the same year.
Wow.
Like, that's not supposed to happen.
No.
He led the team in innings. I get asked, who's going to do the role for Kevin Kopps next year? Be like, just take that question and throw it away.
Right.
There's never going to be you can't ask anybody to do that.
Right.
Because it's such a unique role that he served. And maybe the fact that he seems to be such a unique pitcher with this pitch that he's developed and the way that he throws it, that you can't just say, look, you're going to do what Kevin Kopps did. Because if I was asked to do that, I'd be like, I might try soccer now, because I don't think anybody can do that again. It's the most unique, valuable season for a college baseball pitcher ever. And I don't think there'll ever be a season like it.
It was unbelievable. It was fun to watch. It was awesome to watch the man run out of the bullpen, and you just had such confidence when he came out of the bullpen that everything was going to be okay, no matter what, and it usually was.
He's a great competitor. He really is, and he's not. And I don't fault on-field emotion and pitchers that scream after strikeouts and relievers that have to talk to themselves to psych themselves up and pitch with their hair on fire. Dude, whatever you got to do to be ready to play. This is a pressure-filled sport, and there might not be a more pressure-filled role than relief pitcher. Not just late-inning relief pitcher, but knowing in the 5th and 6th inning you're going to go into a pressure cooker and you need to respond. Kevin Kopps always responded in an incredibly calm way, just like he was taking a walk down the street. And he was like that this year, and he was like that before and before. Never exuded emotion, just went out there and almost robotically threw strikes. And this year just made batters look silly.
Mm-hmm. He did. And it was probably the greatest performance by a Razorback ever. I mean, all Razorbacks.
In baseball, in the baseball team's history, you could make a case. You could make a case because he has to win. He should be the Golden Spikes and the Dick Hauser and the Pitcher of the Year award nationally. That's a pretty impressive triple crown right there if you can pull it off. The thing that's going to be so interesting, because if you're going to say, all right, the greatest, most dominant seasons in Arkansas athletics history, probably look at a season by Sidney Moncrief and Corliss and DMAC and baseball wise, maybe like a Jeff King or a Heston Kjerstad or something like that, or Zach Cox. Kevin Kopps probably is not a first-round pick. All of those guys were first-round picks. Some of them were the first pick in the case of Jeff King, or the second pick, like Darren McFadden, or I remember the top 10. Think of all these guys that I just mentioned that were top 10, not top 10 draft, top 10 first round.
Right.
Kevin's not going in the first round. I can't wait to see which major league team decides to pick him earlier than every other draft analyst that I hear from that says he's a 5th to 10th rounder, because I think he's 24. He made good college hitters look like they'd never swung a bat in their life for most of the season, for like almost the entire season. I want to see him promoted aggressively. Send the dude to Double-A, whatever teams takes him, see what happens. And I would not, if he gets there, if he starts at Double-A and starts doing what he did here. And I'm not saying they're going to ask him to pitch 7 innings or 5 innings or whatever. I mean, they're just going to want to see what he can do. I would love to see him get, to the big leagues the same year, which I'm asking for too much. Realistically, it's too much to ask, but realistically, this season that he had was unrealistic to begin with.
It absolutely was. Let's talk a little bit about just calls. So the Charlie Welch call was an awesome call. Okay. Let me stop there. When you have a call like, or a moment such as the Charlie Welch moment, how do those calls come about?
That's a moment of the game that just happens.
Mm-hmm.
You respond for however it makes me feel. That's
Mhm.
how I do. That's how I do probably like 99% of the calls. I don't script. I might script an open for a pregame show or something like that. But, I mean, moments like that has to happen organically.
Sure.
That always does. And I was prepared for something organic if Arkansas made it to the College World Series with a late comeback in the ninth inning on Sunday, but it didn't happen.
Well, that was actually
Yeah.
my next question. Is you had an awesome, like one of the most memorable calls in 2019 when Arkansas did win the Super Regional, beating Ole Miss. Coming from all the places in the state and all of that. That was an awesome call that a lot of people, well, I mean, even I got chill bumps, listening to that call. Is that something that comes organically, or is that something that you think about a little bit, and that if this happens, this is how we're going to do this?
Well, I mean, I thought about how I wanted to piece that together all day long. I was just nervous that day. That third game of that Ole Miss series was really nervous, and sometimes I react to the nerves by over preparing. In fact, that's what I do. That's probably why I prep as much as I do for baseball and basketball, because I'm nervous. I don't want to sound like an idiot. I don't want to present something improperly. And a lot of times I'm nervous for the teams themselves because I just want them to play well. I like these players that I cover. I know them in a personal way in some cases, and I appreciate their efforts, and I make a living off of their efforts too. I want them to perform well for their sake. So a lot of times I respond to that by a little overactivity, and that day I responded to that to those nerves by kind of thinking, gosh, I'm so jacked up about this. What if they win? And I remember what it felt like the first time I went to the College World Series in 2018, and it just felt like I was in Arkansas and we were in Omaha. It just really felt like a natural state because there were so many people there. It felt like a home game. Baum Stadium North, right?
Right.
So it just only makes sense. It's like, I know it's going to happen if this team wins. You're going to have all these people in red vehicles, and if they're not red vehicles, they're going to have red flags raised from them, and they're going to be going north on the same highway to the same place, and it's going to be pretty darn obvious who they are. So I just had that picture in my mind and went with it.
It was a fantastic call, and I know that you've mentioned that really your dream is to be a major league announcer. But what's it like to fill the role in the seat of a major college team such as Arkansas?
Well, it's I mean, honestly, to me, it feels like it's very much like major league because of the following, the percentage of the people that are fans of the team across the state that are paying attention to it. It feels like a major league audience, and I try to treat it like I would any major league radio broadcast. How I picture it would be like. I just think that there's a lot fewer hands in the pot in a college broadcast where it's really just me and Bubba in the booth, and no one's really telling us how we're supposed to do our jobs very much. Maybe it's because people like it. Major League Baseball, though, is not as openly intense as college baseball is. We have such a concentrated season of 56 games, 30 in the SEC, and every one of them matters more than the major league game does out of a 162 game season. So just imagine the intensity of October in Major League Baseball, and that to me is what the entire college baseball season feels like. So I think if I did Major League Baseball, I would probably have to dial it down a little bit because you got to stay steady in big league baseball. College baseball is not quite like that.
Last question. What do you think the reaction will be like if Arkansas finally does break through and win that national championship?
I mean, there'll be earthquakes across the state. The Mississippi River will reverse and flow backwards, and dogs and cats will be getting together and having fun and all that. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be I don't know what it'll be like. It'll feel like a celebration that won't end, probably. I mean, I remember the first real championship that I was a fan for was the Pittsburgh Penguins Stanley Cup 1991. And I grew up a big Penguins fan and big hockey fan and all the other teams there too. And the Steelers were 2 years old or I was 2 years old when they beat the Rams for the 1980 Super Bowl. So I didn't really know that. So I remember when the Penguins won the Stanley Cup. I mean, I was glowing for more than a month after that. And then they did it again the next year, and but I also had my heart ripped out 3 times when the Pirates lost then. So you had kind of that back and forth stuff. I don't know. I think people will be overjoyed, but until they get that moment, I feel like there's a lot of us that are going to have a lot of trouble believing that it's going to happen until it happens. Just like Cubs fans did, just like Red Sox fans did for all those years. Chiefs fans just got over one of those. Lions and Browns are in the same boat as you guys. Believe me, I understand. It's tough to believe when you have your heart ripped out and shown it to you a number of times, but they'll get there. I think they'll get there.
I think it's a great way to end, man. I appreciate you joining us, giving us a little bit of your time, and man, enjoy your off time. I know that you've got the radio show there on ESPN Arkansas out of Fayetteville and Fort Smith there, but I know you've got to be able to take some time and just kick back and relax a little bit, right?
Well, I'm going to have my kids this summer, so I don't know how much relaxing I'll be able to do, but that's cool with me. I don't mind. I'm looking forward to it. In fact, I'm going to take them to baseball games, so it's kind of what I like to do when I'm not broadcasting them. I don't watch baseball on TV too much, but I like to go to games.
All right. Well, Phil, thanks for joining us once again here on the Razor Wire. And, man, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you sometime, maybe in Omaha or maybe even after that elusive national championship.
Well, I also do the women's basketball games. I got to tell you, I think Mike Neighbors is going to have that program up at the same level pretty soon. So maybe we'll do that one first. We'll see.
Hey, that sounds great to me, man. Thanks a lot, Phil.
All right.
So again, great interview there with Phil Elson. Again, I want to thank him personally for coming on the Razor Wire this week. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more Razor Wire in just a bit. And welcome back to the Razor Wire. And guys, it's we didn't get the season we were looking for in baseball this year. We thought we were going to go there, but didn't quite make it. But the future's certainly bright.
It is very bright. I mean, I don't even know how many years in a row now Arkansas has been in the top 5 in recruiting, up there with the Vanderbilts and the Floridas and all that of the world. And I mean, at this point, you've got guys that are really good that don't even play for Arkansas. And that's, guys that stepped in this year that you didn't know. Kevin Kopps turned into the Terminator. By the way, Kevin Kopps just won Collegiate Baseball Player of the Year. That just came out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Pitcher of the Year. Collegiate Baseball Player of the Year comes out tomorrow. And then, of course, the Golden Spikes comes out, I believe, early next week or maybe Saturday. It's up there somewhere. But anyway, we've got guys that can play, that are going to play. I mean, you're going to be in a good position again next year. And I think your starting pitching is going to be even better than it was this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a big core group. Phil Elson talked about that a little bit in our interview. Peyton Paulette sounds like he may not have to have surgery. In the COVID thing, it kind of makes everything a little different because there's some of these guys that should be eligibility exhausted, but they might possibly come back. We're going to start pitchers first here. So Vermillion, there's a chance. I mean, because the way he finished here, he possibly could come back. But you got Nolan. I think Nolan was starting to come on a little bit at the end of the year. You know, he started in 19 in the COVID shortened year, played a lot in that 18 season, or I'm sorry, in the 20 season. He started that year and played quite a bit in the 19 there towards the end. And we can get him back, get him right, healthy all year. He can kind of solidify. I think he's got a great chance to be one of our starters. You got to talk about a kid like Heston Toll. Heston Toll, you know, had some good moments in the SEC tournament. He's 6'6", 210. I mean, he's got the stuff. He can figure it out and pound that zone. He has an opportunity. Who else am I leaving out here? Brad, on pitching.
Man, there are several guys that have the opportunity to come back that are kind of borderline, like you're saying. There's guys out there. Toll is definitely a guy that even Elson didn't even mention him, but he looked fantastic. I think that there's a chance that he could be, you know, one of the top pitchers in the SEC by the time he's all said and done. I mean, he came and showed his, you know, his everything. I mean, he had good things going here at the end of the season. I mean, he come in a spot against Ole Miss that, you know, he'd only pitched 7 innings coming into that ball game, and really won that Ole Miss game for us there in the SEC tournament. So that was, I think he's got a chance to.
Jackson Wiggins was one, a big one that I didn't bring up, but man, he the dude can throw 99, 98, make it look easy. He throws 95 like he's not even trying. And if he can continue to spot up some of his off speed stuff and develop a third pitch, you know, which he's got it, but to start, you know, really, you know, throwing it consistently, he has a really good chance. Him, Paulette, I really like Paulette a lot. And we talked about it that week before he got injured, that I felt like he grew up a little bit in that, I think it was against Georgia where they had to kind of stay in there a little bit. And then he got hurt against Florida the next series. But in that Georgia series, he kind of had to stay in there a little long and kind of had to rely on the off speed a little more because they were really approaching that fastball big time on him. And I feel like because he has a plus curveball. I mean, it really has a high spin. He just kind of hangs it up sometimes. If he can get it down, and you know, with experience, that's going to come around. If he can go through therapy and be back, that's going to be big right there. Him, Nolan, Wiggins. So you got a big core there. We didn't even talk about guys like Monk. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have a possibility to come back, and then we got a lot of incoming freshmen and that are really special. We got one 5-star kid has a really opportunity if he doesn't sign to come here and do some great stuff.
So this is according to Arkansas Fight, Kevin Bohannon. He's talking about guys that are coming in. You've got, he thinks that Peyton Stovall, shortstop, second baseman, Max Muncy, and Braylon Bishop are all signing. He says Bishop has a 7-figure asking price, but that he looks like he'll sign. Now, sign to play pro ball. Now, the question will be, is if he doesn't get that asking price, does he come to college and play for you know, whatever it is, year or two or whatever, you know, his draft class is? If that's the case, then, you know, maybe Arkansas gets lucky enough. Stovall and Muncy, both, you know, high drafted prospects. I mean, you're talking about asking kids to turn $1 million down. It's really hard to do. I mean, even some more than that, I think. What did Kerstad get? Like 7 million, something like that. Of course, he was the number 2 pick overall, but that's kind of money you're talking about. You know, there's some other kids here, you know, some guys that are projected. You've got Hagen Smith, left-handed pitcher, Drake Bernardo, he's a shortstop, and then Christian Franklin is also included into that. I'm going to see when this article was written here as I'm looking at it, April 28th. So there could be some changes in this. Franklin was at that time projected 43rd. I would say his stock has probably taken a little bit of a hit, probably not a huge hit, but not big enough for him to be back to Arkansas next year, which, you know, he could use another year to come back if he wanted to, eligibility wise. Not going to happen. Okay. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying a guy like him, what happens if he doesn't sign because he either doesn't get the money he wants or whatever? He's still got a leverage year. That's what Connor Nolan has fallen into right now. Nolan is a guy that it's really his third year. He could move on, but he's not going to move on because he's not ready. His draft stock's not very high right now. But if you look at it, year from now, what happens to a guy like Nolan? Does Nolan turn into the next Kevin Kopps type of player? And as Phil Elson said, don't look for the next Kevin Kopps for the most
Yeah.
part. But when I look at Kevin Kopps and what he did, if a guy will come in and work hard enough, I think that we've got the training facilities and the coaching to make a guy turn into something special. And Connor Nolan could be that guy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, like Phil said, when that question gets brought up, you just throw it out because that's not a fair question. Um, Cops just did special things, but I definitely think Nolan can really come on strong here, and he's got the tools. I love his fastball, his slider, and we saw early on in his career that he was always accurate. When he was still playing football and baseball, his velo kind of dropped a little bit. He was, kind of a 90 guy, 89, 88,
Mm-hmm.
occasionally hit 91. Now I feel like he's more of a consistent 92 kind of guy. But when he's really spotting it up, and it's hard on right-handers, especially when he's throwing that slider away from them. I agree on Franklin. He could help his stock a lot. Franklin, if you remember, he used to hit a lot of balls in center field, that right center field
Mm-hmm.
gap, and he kind of changed that approach. I know Moore and him kind of had that bet going this year on who's going to hit the most home runs. And if you watch from about, I don't know, at least Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, the SEC tournament, and the regionals, I mean, he was pulling everything. I mean, and he's an odd feller because I think he led the team in strikeouts, but he also led the team in walks. And I mean, he's very patient, but he also, the last part of the season, he really just kind of try to pull everything. So I think you're right that he could really help himself out. I don't think he's going to come back, but I think if he did, for some reason, if he gets a lot of talk and he drops down lower than where he thinks he should go, he could really help himself and go up the boards with a little bit different approach at the plate. Offensively, Caden Wallace is probably the guy I'm most excited about coming back next year. I really feel like he's in that. I mean, I think he's going to move back to the infield, to third base, his natural position, but he is a Heston Kjerstad top dynamic hitter. And I really feel like another year, I think he could get a 320, 330 top average, top season. He is a special player, and he's fun to watch on defense as well.
And just a
Yeah,
freshman
absolutely.
from Greenbrier. So, I think Caden Wallace definitely has a bright future ahead of him here at Arkansas. I think, that's the bright spot, I think, defensively and offensively, really, to look for.
Mhm.
He does a really good job looking left defensively, and his bat is electric. And I think as long as he continues to do that, Caden Wallace is going to be a force to be reckoned with here for the Hogs.
Y'all remember?
He's got that Heston Kjerstad type of thing about him. Maybe not
Yeah.
quite as good as Kjerstad, but I really look for him to come back next year and really, I mean, have a massive year. I mean, I really think that he's got a chance to be
Yeah.
special.
He's got the speed. I mean, he's almost a five-tool guy, basically. He's very fast. I feel like he could play shortstop if he needed to. You remember the slider he hit? I don't remember what series that was. He hit. It was at Arkansas. Remember, he hit it off the net over in front of the new building, the
Uh-huh.
expansion over there, and it was just slider away, and he just flung his hands at it and hit it, and then it went all the way out. And they said he does that all the time in BP, and that kind of approach, and to have the power to go gap to gap everywhere, just he's special, and he has a really good chance to really, like you said, have a dominant year next year. 330 might not be the limit for him. He could be a 350 type guy and have like a 15 home run. And in my opinion, if we steal a little bit more bags, I don't know if we will do that, but I feel like he's a 15 kind of guy. I feel like he could put those numbers up. I really do.
Yeah, he's a great athlete. Has a great look, man. I think that he's the next star. I mean, that home run he hit there in the eighth inning. He was struggling too. He was really having problems at the plate, and he
Yeah.
kind of got out of it in that last game. He made the adjustments he needed to. Then he hits the home run, stayed
Mhm.
on the ball. I mean, that's the biggest thing for all of them. They just weren't staying on the ball. But
Right.
anyway, with him, He's got a fantastic opportunity to really be one of the greats in Arkansas history. Problem with him is he's only going to be here next year, and he's out because he's a draft eligible sophomore after next year.
Yeah, and I agree. Another guy to go along with him, Charlie Welch. I think he's going to probably be the DH next year. Looks like Leach is going to get the catching duties, and Welch, I think he's probably going to be in that 4 hole, or I mean, 3 or 4. I know DVH always talks about that. He considers the 2 and a 3 and a 4 always kind of, they're all cleanup batters in his opinion. So he's going to be somewhere right in that area. And the guy, man, I mean, he really blossomed, came on. I know pinch hitting is a special thing, and he did, I mean, better than you can ever imagine or hope for a guy to do in that role. But seeing pitches every day in an everyday role over and over and over, I mean, I really feel like that can't do nothing but help you. And the sky's the limit for him as well at the plate. This guy could be a 20 home run type guy next year. I mean, that really has the potential to do that. Moore's going to be back. Moore's got, I mean, he's just dynamic. Going in, I mean, Wallace is special, but Moore, I mean, he might be the most important offensive piece you have, because the guy led off most of the year this year, and then he moved him later. But I mean, he can do a little bit of everything. So yeah, that's a very good core group, and we're going to be around next year. We're going to be in the thick of things, in my opinion.
I think, losing Opitz back there at catcher is going to be a big loss. I mean, that leadership that Opitz brought to the field is something that's very, very difficult to replace. But Duran, you mentioned a name just a moment ago that Razorback fans are going to come quite familiar with, and that's Leach. Back there, he's going to take over the reins with, from Opitz. And from what I've seen, of the few games that I've seen him in, Leach is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, Dylan Leach was a freshman this year, and I think he's gonna. I mean, what can you say about Opitz? I mean, the dude just amazing. He made it look so easy back there. Dude, if batters they don't even know why they miss some of those pitches from Cops. Imagine how hard it is to. I mean, he just makes it look easy. He just those one hoppers, ball spinning sideways, does all kinds of funky things when it does that. I mean, Opens was special, and that'll be that. I think that loss there, we'll feel that, even though I think Leach has got massive potential and he's going to do an excellent job for us. Yeah, it's just one of those guys. You don't just replace a guy like Cops, like a McFadden in football. Just for an example, Opens was very important to this team, and I mean, the guy deserves more credit than he gets. He needs to be on a lot more awards lists and stuff, in my opinion.
And plus, we're going to be bringing in some outside guys. Bringing in some new recruits. Austin Ledbetter, a kid that we interviewed on Primetime Preps during the football season. Austin Ledbetter is going to be joining the Hill. And there's a variety. Like you said, we have a top ranked recruiting class, and I think we're going to be reaching good places.
Here's a guy to watch, by the way, and I don't know exactly his status, but Landry Wilkerson from Crowder, he has hit 360 on the year, 20 home runs, 72 RBIs. He had 52 walks versus 51 strikeouts. He's a big time player. I know Arkansas is on him. I'm trying to find the status. And I think that he's a JUCO guy, so he could have this late status where he signs later. But man, what a possible pickup he would be, and he is he's an outfielder.
Yeah, he's special, and I've heard their coach at Crowley talk about him and how they've had some studs come through Crowley JUCO. And he's talked about him as being one of the best they've ever had. I mean, and when he says that, that's a big time talk right there to be mentioned in that group. The kid is special, and he would help us out big time.
He is an Arkansas commitment. He's from Van Buren, played center field. So he's a guy that if he's not gone in the draft, he's a guy that could possibly be a huge pickup for Arkansas. Arkansas's had really good success with JUCO guys over the years. And so this is a guy that could come in and really help. So what we're saying really in all of this is that there's just so many guys that you can name that there's going to be too many to even play again this next year. I mean, there are going to be guys. Curtis Wilkerson as a guy. Wilkerson, I believe, was a guy that played at Arkansas. He couldn't get on the field. He goes to JUCO and just tears it up. He's going to be a guy that's going to come and be great for somebody next year. And he could not play at Arkansas because he just couldn't get on the field. Didn't have the at bats. Now this is when, you still had Christian Franklin, you still had Heston Kerstad. He transfers out after that. Would have loved to have had him this year. He would have been a big time player for Arkansas. But that's the kind of situation you're in right now, where you've got so many good players on the team, you can't even play them all. That's where you're at with Arkansas baseball. That's why next year you're looking at a possibility of being right back where you were. Do you even want to be number one all year next year? I don't think so. I think that pressure hurt them this year, but I think that you've got a chance that by the time it's all said and done, that you're talking Omaha again, just like I said before.
Yep. And so, I mean, we're looking at baseball. Baseball is going to be a very good team next year. Basketball is going to be good. Coach Muss is in the right direction. Sam Pittman, I love the guy. I mean, if what he's doing off the field translates to wins on the field, Arkansas football is going to be in good hands. And I mean, just look at the 2020-21 season for Arkansas, and what an outstanding overall sports season we've had.
Oh my gosh. As a guy that is a fan, we cover the team and we try to be as objective as we can here on the Arkansas Sports Network. I can sit here and tell you when they're not good and when they are good, but this year they're good. I mean, they're just good at just about everything. And it's a huge change from what we've been through over the last, 100 years? I don't know. It just seems like forever since it's been that we've been good. And not only are we good at one thing, we're good at all things right now. I mean, 10 SEC regular season conference championships, 17 of your 19 teams qualified for postseason play this last year. I can't even remember how many weeks at number one, how many weeks in the top 10, how many coach of the year in the SEC. I mean, it was a phenomenal year. It was a phenomenal year.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun.
And it's not just the big three. It's not just football, basketball, baseball. It's softball, it's hockey, it's track and field, it's gymnastics. It's across the board.
Oh yeah.
Women's basketball. Phil Elson talked about that. He's excited about next season and what my coach Neighbors is doing. We've got we probably got the most talented recruits ever assembled up there right now. And we just lost a Dungy, who was amazing, first round pick. There's 3 5-stars, I believe, on that current roster. It's been an awesome year, and we led the way all through baseball. If you talk about the opening series where we were down at Arlington, neutral site, basically that was a series. We went undefeated there. Texas Tech, TCU. Then we played 10 SEC series all together, counting the NCC State and the SEC tournament and everything. We played 17 series. We won 16 of them, 16 in a row. If you consider all those series, the regional, everything, and just didn't pull that last one off. But it's been like no season I can remember. You add Cops into that message. Into that to that mix, and I've never seen a guy do what he did this year in college baseball. It has been so much fun to watch, so special. Yeah, we didn't get the ultimate prize that we wanted, but it's been a fun ride and at the very top of my favorite seasons of all time. And just the program's really at an awesome place right now overall. And DVH is going to get us there. He really is. I 100% believe that.
Perspective.
Keep knocking on the door.
You know what I mean? Just keep the perspective of all of this. It's not very long ago that we weren't winning anything but baseball. Right. It was a miserable football season. It was a miserable basketball season, and nobody was winning anything. And then all of a sudden here, you've got Courtney Deifel raising the program from the dead, and then you've got Mike Neighbors doing what basically the same thing.
Yep.
You've got Sam Pittman making us competitive. and something that we don't have to hide our heads. You know, I couldn't imagine being a Razorback fan in like the state of Alabama during football season for the last few years, and how terrible it had to have been for those guys to just be so ashamed of what's going on the field. Then you get Pittman in, and we won 3 games this last year, but it was like a prideful thing, you know, where everything started to kind of come in together. And, you know, we should have won 6 games.
Right.
I mean, you know, the Auburn game, LSU
COVID.
game, the Missouri game, all 3 of those games could have been easily won. And
we did beat Auburn, LSU.
You're right.
So
You're
we
right.
won 5
Right.
in my book. That's what makes it even more special
Right.
what Pittman did, because I mean, you got cheated in those, and here's the thing: we weren't even competitive in it. We were competitive in every single game since Pittman's been here. The only game you could maybe throw out was that the Alabama game and then the Florida game. But I mean, other than those 2, and very few teams are competitive against those last year. So
Right.
I mean, just it's special, and I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see where we are in January and what we talk about what happened this football season, because I'm excited about it, and I really think we have an opportunity to shock some people and do a little bit better than some people think. I honestly think we're not. I know we got the toughest schedule in the country, but it would not shock me if we win 7 games this year.
What's new, right? I mean, really, when it comes down to the toughest schedule in the country every year,
Yeah,
what's new?
every
I
year.
mean, it's like Arkansas somehow ends up. I mean, you know, we've got other teams in the SEC West that are tough, but somehow it's we get the toughest schedule. And this year, it's Texas coming in with their overrated selves, coming into Fayetteville, and they're going to be 100-point favorites. You know, whatever. Steve Sarkisian going to be the greatest coach of all time, and all of this other garbage that's going to happen. You know, that's going to come along with it, and then we're going to have a chance to win that ball game when it's all said and done. But you know, there's nothing new about playing tough schedules at Arkansas. It's been that way for years now.
Yep, that's right. And we'll see what exciting things happen next year in baseball. You know, we might get some more Vitello and Dave Van Horn talks at home plate over some guys. You know, I think that a lot of people think that might have been over to Logan Chambers' kid from Bryant that's at Crowder that's committed to Tennessee right now. Who knows? Maybe Van Horn can pull that out of his hat and get him to flip back over to us at the last second. Yeah, guys, we appreciate it. Come like the Arkansas Sports Network, share it, comment, talk to us about that, and let us know what you like about the show, what you want to see on here. Ask us questions. We can bring them up possibly.
That's it. So, you know, like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at AR Sportsnet and online at ArkansasSportsNetwork.com. And we're going to take the next week off. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, we'll see us next time right here on
The Razor Wire.